So yesterday I put together a musical instrument, and a musical instrument is probably a bit of a stretch for this one. A couple of weeks ago I went over to go and pick up some spare parts for the telephone exchange from an eBay seller called Autofloor, who I actually got the telephone exchange from in the first place. He's got a whole load of spare parts and stuff, and he had this rack of uniselectors and it looked awesome, and yeah, it was pretty hard leaving without it, I've got to be honest, so yeah, I sort of left with it. Uniselectors are pretty much electromechanical rotary switches. If you look in here you can actually see that it actually flicks around. I've talked about these quite a lot. This specific one I got quite a while back with the plan of making a sequencer out of. I will make it one day, I promise to do. And it spins around the contacts using a ratchet and pull mechanism, and this ratchet and pull kind of mechanism is quite nice and noisy, and it can run quite quickly, and yeah, it actually emanates a sort of oscillating sound. So after chatting with the eBay seller Autofloor about it, well, you know, it kind of just kind of happened, and we decided, yeah, it's probably good to turn this into a musical instrument, right? So like I said, this uniselector is slightly different, and we will make a sequence of wave shaping thing from it, I promise, at some point. But the actual uniselectors that are in this rack, well, they're the same as the ones in the UAX13. And sort of when I was fixing that thing, well, I heard its musical potential in some ways, because it does tend to oscillate quite quickly even in the exchange.
Oh baby, let's sing a little song.
So the first thing I did was got hold of this power brick, which is a 50-volt power brick, and that's going to power the uniselectors. Then it was about figuring out how to interface the uniselectors with other lower voltage pieces of electronics that run on 5 volts. I then got out some MOSFETs, the P16NF06 to be precise, and these are basically chunky transistors that make it quite easy to power things like this from things like this. So I put a MOSFET on the breadboard, I added a diode just to stop it going pop, and yeah, gave it a test. The wire that I'm touching there is the wire that will be interfacing to lower voltage electronics like the Arduinos or modular synths or stuff like that. After working out that worked, I had to solve the next problem, which is working out where to put the electronics on this rack kind of thing. I was like trying to figure out where to put a project box, and I ended up taking the turret boards from the front of the assembly, putting them around the back, and then putting the project box right there, and happy days. After that, I soldered the wires onto the uniselectors and made a wiring loom that went over to the project box, and then popped some connectors on there so we can connect the MOSFETs and stuff like that all up and make it nice and neat. Then I made 7 of these MOSFET circuits on a piece of proto board. That means we could talk to all 7 uniselectors with 7 MOSFETs. Lovely jubbly. Boom, they seem to work, which is always good. To control these MOSFETs that control the uniselectors, we're going to use an Arduino. So this Arduino is going to talk to each separate MOSFET via a separate leg coming out of the Arduino. So the Arduino's legs could control the uniselectors in a roundabout way. So the Arduino is wired up with a MIDI input so we can plug in a keyboard to control the uniselectors. The code that I'm using on the Arduino isn't my own. I went for a weekend last month around Nervous Squirrels, and Marek was there, and we got into a conversation. He was talking about this piece of code that he made ages ago that meant you could kind of choose how many voices you wanted to come out on different legs on the Arduino, sending pulses, so you can in theory control floppy disks and stuff like that, and that code is available below. Marek has also made the looping app Koala for iPad, so you may have used that before, I don't know. It's pretty cool because you can adjust it to have quite a few voices, and you can have it going out of the same pin or separate pins, so you can control things like floppy drives, stepper motors to be musical, or, you know, like in this case, uniselectors. So after that, I messed around for a little bit, fine-tuning the instrument, and yeah, let's have a listen and see what kind of monstrosity this thing is. All right, let's pop it up here. Oh, you can sort of hold it like a guitar, and I might actually add some keys to this, some buttons, and then pop it on a strap and make it just the most heaviest, pointless guitar sort of thing. But right now, let's give it a test. Oh my God. Right, let's wire it in, and then you can see what a serious onslaught it is to your senses. Whilst I was testing this, I had to wear earplugs because the sound from the solenoids clicking, like metal hitting metal, is so noisy. Yeah, it made my ears like noticeably tired. It was quite surprising how loud it actually is. I mean, it's a similar concept to like floppy drives and stepper motor kind of control to make them musical. However, this thing's got a lot more distance to move, so you have a little bit more of a limited range. You only have about 2 octaves max, 1.5 octaves of usable notes here. I was going to make it polyphonic, but you can't make it quick enough to make it useful polyphonic. It's too muddy. So what I've done is I've actually cascaded them down. So every note is like it's 7 oscillators out of sync with each other. And it just sounds like the most metal kind of sound. So what do you reckon? It's a funky experiment. There's a few more things that you can do with this. Whether I'll end up doing it or not, who knows? If I'm feeling fruity one day, I will turn it into a keytar by putting some keys on here and also breaking out the switch point so you can use it as sort of a wave shaper. Who knows? Let's see where that goes. After I played with this, I recorded a sound pack for Patreon, and when I was experimenting, I actually found some funky kind of rhythm kind of ideas. So you bounce between the really low oscillations and the high oscillations of it, and it sort of sounds pretty funky and rhythmic. If you're interested in those and loads of different types of rhythms and samples and recordings of all of the notes through this, well, that's available over on Patreon, along with a load of other samples and stuff like that. The link is below. I'll probably have this wired up and playable at This Museum's Not Obsolete this weekend, which is open. It's open for another 3 weekends this season, and it'll be closed and it's going to get a rearrange. So if you're interested in playing on this and a load of other machines, then go and check it out. The link is below as well. Anyway, I've been Look Mum No Computer. This is a weird uniselector thing. Have a lovely time, and yeah, don't be scared to try it. Maybe don't try this. Maybe.